welcome. Very good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for joining us here on Mirror Now. I am Afrida Rahman Ali. The focus on Big Story today is on the race to the White House. We will look at several elements that we are tracking at this point. The much-awaited election day has kicked off in the U.S. with the first ballots cast in New Hampshire. Earlier, the leaders made a last-ditch effort to woo the voters, primarily in the battleground states. Trump went on a self-congratulatory mode, while celebs and the former U.S. President Barack Obama pitched for Joe Biden. So that's the latest that we are getting. And of course, at this point, we are going to look at several important questions that has arisen through the course of the campaign to the race to the White House. Will Trump-Pence get a second term, or will Biden-Harris then stage a win? Who will occupy the Oval Office? How will the ballots really be counted? Because there are complications involved there as well. Remember, millions of Americans have already voted. What we do know, of course, that there are 538 electors in the Electoral College. 270 electoral votes are required for one candidate to win the presidential election. So that's the overall context. I have now Mr. Narayan Lakshman joining me on the broadcast, who is the associate editor and the former U.S. correspondent for The Hindu, joining me. Good afternoon, Narayan Lakshman. Thank you so much for giving us your time. We would first like to understand that, the important part of the discourse right now is the part about counting, the part about different ways that the ballots are cast, the mail-in voting plus the in-person voting. Now, two things are being said, that the numbers in mail-in voting this time around is very high, and that could be indicative of the Democrats leading the race. And the second thing that is being said is that this could actually delay counting.
Absolutely, Afrida. I think both types of voting will happen, of course, and nearly 100 million votes are expected to have been cast through mail-in voting this time, which is a sort of record even compared to the 2016 election. And as you indicated, this primarily could make the results lean a bit towards the Democrats. But more than anything, we should remember that this reflects the impact of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And so mail-in voting is obviously the alternative to being in person in the proximity of others in a large group at the polling station. And therefore, a lot of people have opted for that. I think it's still a little bit of a question mark as to whether the surge in mail-in voting is going to be Democrat. It's very hard to say because, again, as we know from 2016, a large number of undecided and independent voters did swing towards, at that point, candidate Trump. And that really caught the Democrats off guard. So we should be a little cautious and wait until results come in.
Right, because this is significant from the perspective of how long will it take for us to know the result. It's always a trend that there is a premature declaration and then the final official process takes off of making a formal declaration. I want to, in fact, for the sake of our viewers, draw their attention to the fact that the campaign is now drawn to an end, and U.S. President Donald Trump has posted a video of him dancing to the iconic YMCA song. Trump put out a compilation of him dancing and asking his supporters to vote. That is, again, typical trademark Donald Trump. Also, in a massive Republican rally in Wisconsin, U.S. President called himself a perfect physical specimen. And there's a reason why he says that. Let's listen in, and I'll go back to Narayan Lakshman to understand why the focus has been so much on these battleground states, Wisconsin, for instance. But first, let's listen into Donald Trump.
You know, I'm a perfect physical specimen. And I am considered very, very young. I'm considered young for my age. No, I'm a perfect specimen. I'm in perfect shape. So I'm sure I would have thrown it away. But no, but I had it. And the next morning, I was not feeling good at all, I tell you. The doctor said, "Sir, I hate to say it, you've just tested positive." I said, "Doc, Sean," a great doctor, White House doctor. I said, "Sean, tell me, what does that mean? Tested positive for what?" "Sir, you've tested positive for the China plague." No. He used it much nicer. He said COVID.
So, Narayan Lakshman, so much is being spoken about the battleground states, and I want to understand from you that does the dynamic change from contest to contest depending on who's in the race? Because this year, North Carolina, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona is being touted as those bellwether states. But how do you interpret the fact that these are the swing states where maximum of campaigning has been focused on? And will these states really determine the outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And before that, I must say I was struck by this video of Trump dancing, because the song YMCA is actually sort of an iconic, popular song for the gay and LGBT community. And it is quite remarkable because President Trump has been, in many instances, seen as a president who is hostile towards the interests of that community. And this, to me, looks like a last-minute attempt to kind of say, look, no, I am a moderate. I do care for, racial, sexual, religious minorities. And so you should vote for me. So that is, to me, that really jumped out as the sort of subliminal message within that video. Anyway, coming to your question, Afrida, you're absolutely right to say that the swing states determine a lot, often to the frustration of many Democrats who live in states like California, and maybe Republicans who live in states like, let's say, Wyoming, that their votes really don't matter that much. And the reason is the unique system of the Electoral College that you explained as well, the process whereby the absolute majority in each state does not count the way that it does in India, which is a representational democracy. Instead, you have what's like a first past the post system. Whoever gets the most votes in each state then ends up winning all the Electoral College votes for that state. And as I just indicated, there are some states which are permanently red or blue, which are permanently Republican or Democrat, or when I say permanently, I mean in the foreseeable future. However, there are this smaller group of purple states, in a sense, or swing states, where, depending on the election, the presidential candidates in question, they have switched from Democrat to Republican or vice versa, and therefore they are truly up for grabs, though Electoral College votes in those states can be won by either side. Therefore, it is not surprising that both candidates have concentrated their campaigning firepower on these states. And particularly in 2020, the state of Pennsylvania is being seen as crucial for victory. And I believe Florida, too, is in play. It has 29 electoral votes. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. And I think you're going to see that even regardless of what the final outcome is in both of these states as well as others, we're going to again have to wait beyond tomorrow morning in India time, because the states will start declaring their results as early as 5:30 a.m. India time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But you are going to see a lot of delays kicking in because of what we spoke about earlier, which is the mail-in voting in vast, vast numbers, unprecedented actually.
Yes. Right. So the answer to the question of when will we get to know for sure, that is not certain. Like you said, there is a very strong possibility of delays. Let's shift focus to Joe Biden for a bit. Now, in a massive boost to Joe Biden's campaign, the who's who of Hollywood turned up, including the Friends star Jennifer Aniston, singer Taylor Swift, and music legend John Bon Jovi. They've all thrown their weight behind Joe Biden. And singers like Lady Gaga and John Legend also were seen attending his political rallies. They asked voters to back the Biden-Harris administration to come to power. In fact, Trump, however, has targeted all those who have backed Biden, even as no major celebrity has shown up for his rallies. But let's in fact also listen in to some of the statements, some of the addresses that have been made by these celebrities. And I'll go back to Narayan Lakshman.
Right now is time for action. It's time to muster all of our energy, every ounce of us, every ounce of hope and optimism and enthusiasm, every ounce of fear and frustration and discouragement. Vote like your life depends on it, or vote like your children's lives depend on it. Now is your chance to vote against Donald Trump, a man who believes his fame gives him the right to grab one of your daughters or sisters or mothers or wives by any part of their bodies. Vote for Joe. He's a good person. Thank you.
Joe Biden will be a president who doesn't take pleasure in dividing us, but one who works hard to bring us together in common cause and common effort. A president guided not by wishful thinking, but by a belief in science and a commitment to justice. Don't let them take away your vote. Don't let them take away your voice. Philadelphia, we have the power to put an end to this nightmare. If we win this state, then Donald Trump will be gone. And Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States.
Well, there's yet another important voice that has come in favor of Joe Biden, and that is of former U.S. President Barack Obama. He criticized Donald Trump for casting doubts on the results of Tuesday's election, that is today's election. But addressing a Monday evening drive-in rally in Miami on Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's behalf, Obama said that his successor has suggested and he quotes saying, "Declare victory before all votes are counted." Now that, Obama believes, can only be uttered by a two-bit dictator. Let's listen in.
He's been coddling dictators for the last 4 years. And now apparently he says he might declare victory before all the votes are counted tomorrow. Don't boo. Vote. That's not something you want to hear in little Havana or little Haiti. That's not something that a leader of a democracy does. That's something a two-bit dictator does. If you believe in democracy, you want every vote counted.
So, Narayan Lakshman, what did you make of that? I mean, Obama, of course, very strongly pitching, predictably so, for Joe Biden. In many of the polls that we have seen so far, it shows that Joe Biden is ahead of Donald Trump, at least as of now. Could that change?
Absolutely, Afrida, it could change. And the reason is that you recall what happened again in 2016, which is the polls got it very, very severely wrong. And even until election day, election night, they were calling the election for Hillary Clinton by, I think, 95% chance. And, Trump had 10% or less. And so I think the reason for that is there are several, actually, and some of them are statistical. One is obviously you have this phenomenon of what were called shy Trumpers, that is voters who actually supported then candidate Trump, but did not want to reveal their preference to vote for him to the pollsters. Secondly, you have a non-response error, which means that the pollsters, and there are many, many polls which are conducted at the federal level, at the state and local level, many of them use statistical models to predict which voters will turn up. However, they seem to have overestimated the number of college-educated people or urban people who would have turned up and voted. Whereas, as even former First Lady Michelle Obama said, there was a sense of crushing defeat and disappointment after that election because Democrats just did not turn up and vote, registered Democrats. And instead, you had a whole bunch of undecided and independent voters deciding the election, and the polls never picked up on that. So that's another reason for 2022. We should be very, very careful. Similar to last time, Vice President Joe Biden is holding a lead, like you correctly said, most importantly in the swing states, including Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. But at the same time, there are these risks of polls going a bit wrong. Polls only tell you about the attitude of people when they think about the election. It doesn't actually tell you how they will behave on election day. And more importantly, it only looks at the nation as a whole in many cases, or a state as a whole. It doesn't look at what happens within each state in terms of the electoral college process. And as we know, that is all important in deciding who votes, who gets elected. And can I just say again that the whole statement that President Obama made about the mail-in voting and Trump disparaging that, Trump has gone on record again saying that he will not declare early election, but at the same time has warned that he is very much getting ready to file legal challenges across the board. So his lawyers have already probably got their briefs ready. This is going to escalate to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Things don't get decided at the polling booth.
Absolutely. That's a real worry. In fact, that's something we are tracking here on the channel as well, because a lot of those statements have been made by Donald Trump about how there is election fraud, how there is rigging. In fact, he went to the extent of saying that the only way he would lose this election if it's already rigged. But we have heard many of those outrageous statements coming from Donald Trump. Thank you so much, Narayan Lakshman, for joining us with your views and for giving us so much clarity on the subject. Appreciate your giving us your time. So we are going to, in fact, also look at the issue that we just spoke about, the kind of fears of civil riots that are currently floating. The sale of weapons in parts of the United States has increased amid fears of civil riots. Now, in Michigan, for instance, people were seen rushing in to buy guns. There are also fears of an increase in militia groups. Authorities in October had alleged that members of two anti-government paramilitary groups, the Michigan Three Percenters and the Wolverine Watchmen, were plotting to kidnap Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer before the 3rd November elections.
We are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
Not true.
it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's.